Hello guys, it is our great pleasure to host today Dr. Carmel Vaisman from the University, Tel Aviv University. This is exceptionally interesting person focused on the research on online communities, computer-mediated communication, post-humanism and transhumanism, and I hope that she is able to give today a great presentation that mix all of these interesting fields in one presentation. This talk will be devoted to these two great figures of contemporary popular culture, the vampire and the zombie. So we are expecting really interesting talk about it. And please warmly welcome Dr. Vaisman in our department.
Thank you and hi everyone. Okay. Try not to talk too loud. So, as Jan said, we're going to talk a bit about vampires and zombies, but in relation to what? I'm in these days beginning to write a book about posthumanism in everyday life. And posthumanism, if you guys have heard this buzzword, it is more of a philosophical theory, so most of the discourse about it is in philosophy. And I want to talk about it from a different bottom-up perspective, from popular culture, from how we experience it online. And what I'm presenting today is a bit of an experimental, it's a thread that I have from this book that I'm writing. I will start with zombies and vampire, but we will get to more elaborate ideas about virtuality, our life online, our identities as posthuman spaces. Now, if you look at Wikipedia, what is posthumanism, you will find about 7 different definitions, ranging from AI takeover and Skynet to the environmental movement of voluntary human extinction. But in academia, we look at it from 2 perspectives that's still debated if they're connected to each other or the exact opposite. One of them is the ethical awareness to the fact that we are not we as humans are not the primary creatures of creations and the end of evolution as maybe religions or humanism, enlightenment movement has told us. Maybe we should be more ethically aware to others around us, which could be animals, could be technology, is seeing it as an alterity, as an other. So this is one aspect of posthumanism. The other aspect is simply going beyond the human, literally, going beyond human biology. So it's this science fiction quest, maybe, to often referred to as transhumanism, because it's a transformation of ourselves through technology, being cyborgs, becoming something else, maybe becoming information and transferring our consciousness to the web, or putting it in a robot. So all those kinds of sci-fi dreams are a form of the posthuman, going beyond human biology, seeing the human as much more than its biology. So with those notions I'm gonna play today, and let's start with this metaphor of zombies and vampires. I'm going to talk a bit about this metaphor and what is the meaning of this metaphor and where is this going, and we're gonna start from there. So first of all, vampires and zombies are very popular. They're both they have a lot in common, but they're usually not researched together. Even as genres, they're very different. One of them is considered more science fiction, one is more fantasy, and usually don't see bits of research on science fiction that take them together. There's this whole literature about zombies, another different literature about vampires, but I see an interesting connection between them, if not merely because they become so ubiquitous on our TV screens lately. So they have a huge comeback, both of them. There's creatures all over global media. And I wonder what this means, what kind of metaphors there are for us, what is the meaning of both those symbols. So I'm going to go and cover a bit some of the meanings that were already ascribed to both those characters, so you would see that, what is it running away? Okay, you would see that it's actually a very changing metaphor, and in every time in history, you see a different meaning that is ascribed to zombies and vampires. So I arranged it according to a couple of different epochs. So the first phase that I call it the humanistic enlightenment phase, the phase of modernity, the past in our terms. Those two metaphors, when they first appeared, they represented fear of the other. They were an other. You know, this is running away. Both of them are considered monsters. Vampires have a literary past tradition in the Victorian literature, but zombies don't have a literary past. They started from movies, but both of them were considered monstrous, and we were supposed to be afraid of them. So for zombies, you can see here some quick, just to show on the slide some literature saying what kind of fears they represented. Post-colonial fears, especially in the United States, from Haiti, voodoo kind of things. They represent immigrants, hordes of immigrants that we're afraid of, or lower classes of society, the despair of the working class in America during the Great Depression. So those are the first zombie movies that represented this fear from masses of others that are different than us. For vampires, it was a different kind of monster. You know, they don't look like the zombies, they look like us, but they're an other from the inside. So this is not about hordes of monsters, it's about individuals that look like us, but they're not exactly like us. So in the past, the vampire represented a stereotype of the Jew, for example. It had a lot to do with blood, you know. And more recently, it was a fear of gay people. Right? So in True Blood, for example, in the American series, it was this stereotype was very evident. And so it's an other, but a different kind of other, one more hordes of, more social class representative, and one was more an individual stereotype. Now, in this phase that we were living in until recently, that was called postmodernity, late modernity, liquid modernity, according to Bauman, choose to take your pick. Those monsters are no longer an other. They're actually us. So it's not an other to fear. We start seeing ourselves in them. And you could see the change in the images of those monsters. For example, zombie movies started portraying our social anxieties from things that could happen to us, especially after 9/11 or the SARS epidemic. So you see, again, a lot of literature that's ascribing the zombie movies to the fear of society's collapse, threats to public health, the failure of existing social structures. And so a lot of the more modern zombie movies and TV series are more about representing us, what will happen to us, and not fear of the other. Some more recent literature is ascribing this to the fear of capitalism, mass consumption, right? It's a stereotype of zombies are consuming the flesh. So it's an analogy of mass capitalistic consumption, and maybe social alienation. Sorry, I don't know, this is running away. Social alienations, spiritual void. So the zombie is voided of agency. So it's an analogy to those types of fears, but this is the difference now. It's not about looking at someone else and fearing it as a monster. This is us, this is happening to us. Now with vampires, something else is happening. Now the vampires are not an other, they're us. The difference they represented is no longer a fear, it's actually kind of sexy. Right? Being different is sexy. It starts with Anne Rice's sympathetic characters, victimized vampires in her novels, but it goes to TV, and we see more and more on TV. We see vampires that we like. We don't fear them. We actually want them to like us. And the image of the vampire is changing. There's some recent literature talking about how vampires on TV represented post-feminist backlash. We see a lot of romantic vampires with capacity for love. We see them as desired sex symbols. And there's some criticism that they reinforce traditional gender roles. But for our purposes, means that the vampire is no longer a monster. He's actually us. He's a desired type of us even. And if you see, just to illustrate this, those are some posters from movies. You can see the first vampire movie from the 20s, Nosferatu. So Nosferatu was a monster, right? And then Dracula with Bela Lugosi in the 30s. Bela Lugosi already looks more human. Like he's a good actor, considered a sexy actor of his times, but he still plays a monster, but a monster that could be tamed. Now we're playing with this idea that maybe the monster could be tamed, and then 1994, we see the most desired sex symbols of those times, Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise playing vampires in Interview with a Vampire, and of course 2006 or 7, I think it was, the Twilight series, and Edward the Vampires, that is played by, again, an actor that is selected as the sex symbol of that year. So you can see, even in those little visuals, how the vampire is no longer the monster. He's us, and even the best of us. It's somebody that we want. So it's not a monster to chase, it's maybe somebody to invite into our bed, even, in this post-feminist fantasy. Now, the same sublimation happens with technology, I think. We could see this as, again, in the 30s, modern times, with Charlie Chaplin and the remnants of the Industrial Revolution. We can see how we were afraid of technology. There was a lot of dystopian sci-fi. We're afraid of the big machines that will dehumanize us. But today, we have little, cute machines that are no less dangerous, controlling, and surveilling than anything we have imagined about older machines, but we like them. They're shiny, like the shiny vampire from Twilight, right? They're our friends, and we have adopted and adopted those images, and I think there's a connection there between technology, vampires, and zombies, and this is what I'm going to try to tease next, because we live now in a third phase. Some people say we're still in post-modernity, but we claim that we are actually looking at a third phase that we call trans or post-humanism, those recent times in which technology is very much embedded in our lives, and then now we have to interpret zombies and vampires as representing something else, representing us with technology, or even us as technology. Now, for zombies, I don't have to explain that, I think, because there is already literature about this. Zombies is already a metaphor that is used to describe us with technology, that we put our heads into those shiny iPhones and forget about everyone else around us. So it is already a metaphor of zombification of society when we are with technology. But there's also some literature talking about the meaning of zombie movies and series like Walking Dead today. Why is it so ubiquitous? Well, it signifies the death of subjectivity, the end of narrative, according to some researchers. I'm going to explain a bit those two interesting literatures that talk about the significance of zombies to the culture of virtuality and us with technology. So Arthur and Mary Louise Crocker wrote already in '96 this idea that zombies represent virtuality, because like they consume the flesh. We have this dream of leaving our flesh behind and being virtual, being merely information. So we like zombies, and we like to be virtual, and this is part of the same imaginaire, part of the same social dream. Mark Des, which is a communication scholar from Holland, has a very interesting idea that we live in the media rather than with the media today. It's not that we live with technology, but actually a lot of our lives are on technology, in technology. So what he says, that the strategies of survival for us in the sea of information when we are online are strategies taken from the world of zombies. So for him, it's not a critical metaphor that, oh my God, we're zombified. He actually thinks, you know, we should learn from zombies. There's a thing here that we do that only like this we could survive in the media. For example, if we want to find out what is the latest interest, then we move in swarms from place to place in the media. And if we miss it, if we don't behave, like zombies, then we'll have the fear of missing out, right? Or I think it's timed somehow, so I'm moving it back. The hive mind metaphor, right? It is a zombie metaphor, so we look for wisdom of the crowds, and we're very interested in developing this hive mind of society. This is again a strategy of zombies. They have a hive mind, they don't have an individual mind. And of course, binging of TV series, which is the new Netflix model. So a lot is offered to us in terms of hordes of zombies, and maybe those are the best strategies to survive a rich media environment. Behave like zombies. Okay, so this is what we have about zombies signifying today, today's interaction with technology. And you can see how this rich image of a zombie moves and adapts itself to signify something else in every epoch. I want to try and say something like this about vampires as well, because we don't have a more recent literature about vampires. The latest bon ton is feminist backlash, the sexy vampire. So I want to try and say that vampires, if you compare them to zombies, they offer you a different type of model of transcending your biology. So if the zombie is a virtual, it's a metaphor of the virtual, going virtual, forgetting your body, living online, becoming information, then the vampire actually stays within your biology. It is still you, you look like you, but something inside you has been replaced to live forever. So in transhumanism, one of the most sought after interests is radical life extension. They want to live forever. And there's a lot of, they're funding a lot of medical research into transcending sickness, aging, the effects of aging, suffering, and even death. They want to go beyond death. But the meaning of transcending your biology is just prolonging death as much as you can, and maybe we can live until we're 300. And I think that this is one of the reasons that today in our cultural imagery that is promoted by a lot of science fiction and science literature, then we see the vampire as a model for something that we can be maybe after the death of man, as a man that has an end, a biological end. Maybe this is how we look like when we prolong our biology, when we snooze it forever. So maybe this frees us in a way, because you know vampires are, once somebody turns into a vampire, he loses his inhibitions, right? They do what they want suddenly. They're faster, they have super abilities, they have even a stronger will and need and lust than the normal human, right? So it is a metaphor that tries to show you that maybe after the death of man, you'll be better. You will not look dead. You'll have something else ticking from the inside. You'll be technologized in a way, and then you'll be a better person, maybe losing your inhibitions. And this serves to this imagery of what are we going to look like after we lose this connection with biology. I think they connect very well with other images that we see on our media screens and in popular culture, the images of the cyborg, for example, or superheroes. And if you think about it, there are very few human heroes out there right now on TV. Right? Think about what you like, what your children like, what your little brothers like. Right? Everybody likes non-human heroes. It's very hard to find a human hero on TV that we could identify with. This is not what we aspire for. We think that this imagery is actually prompting us to think about ourselves as what will we be in the future. We will be more than human. Even less than human is fine, right? We will think that we either degrade or turn ourselves into something virtual that consumes the flesh, or maybe we're able to keep our flesh but become something else with technology or with something else that we do in medicine or evolution and get superpowers. But all that's going on today on TV is taking us to either being more or less than human or something else that doesn't have to do with the human. This baby here is something that is lost to us. We threw the baby with the water somehow, and when we think about being post-human, it's the human that we leave behind. We have no imagery today, we have no imagination of what kind of humans we can be in the future. When we think about the future, it's something post-human. It's something human with something else, right? And so this is an interesting, I don't know even if to conceptualize this as a problem, but this is something that we should be aware of, that we don't have, we usually materialize what we dream, right? We have visions and then we make them true. And we don't have currently a vision that we can see in popular culture of what humanity will be. All the visions that we have are what post-humanity will be. What humanity will be when it mixes with something else. Genes, alteration, technology. It's either a technologization of our biology or transcending it completely to being something else or losing something that we have. But I find no vision for a better humanity, things that we used to have in the past when we had ideologies and ideas about humanity. So this is interesting. Now, what happens here, and now I'm moving to this idea that I'm trying to play with in my book, I think that this signifies this ubiquitous imagery of vampires, zombies, superhumans, cyborgs, and all other creatures that are not human. I think they're trying to hash for a society two models of scientific ways of how will we lose our agency, what will happen to human agency. And in this next slide, I'm showing you two mechanisms that today in our popular imaginary, in popular culture, two mechanisms through which we imagine that we will not have agency or what will happen in the future. Now, both of them are based on current science. In current science today, there are two major ways in which we think that we will transcend to be post-human. And those mechanisms are represented well by this metaphor of being zombies or vampires, but this is what I think this metaphor means today. It tries to create this imagery of what will happen to human agency, what will happen to our identity. So one mechanism is the mechanism of animation. Thinking about ourselves as animated by something else. Now, today's science claims, modern science claims today that we might not have free will. That we might not even have a consciousness in the way that we think about consciousness. There isn't an I inside there, right? So it gets very close to Buddhist notions of there's no I, there's no self. And modern science today, modern brain science, really tries to prove that and shows more and more how we don't really have an agency. We don't have free will and choice as much as we think. Maybe we have free will for a second there in the brain, according to certain recent research. And in the humanities and social sciences, when they think about theories of, okay, so how do we operate? What animates us? So there's two major hypotheses today. One of them talks about us being animated by memes. Not the internet memes that you know, but internet memes come from the same theory of memetics that actually is it's a cultural gene in a way. If you think about genes, that genes is what makes us human. We're a cluster of genes. Then a meme is actually a cultural gene, and those cultural genes, according to those theories, seem to have the agency that we lack. So cultural ideas and ideologies and formats and things that flow through us, we just imitate them and create things with them and flow them back into culture, and this is what we are. So we're described as an empty vessel that memes animate us. Now in cybernetics, they think about what is our self. They would tell you the self is made out of information. It's not your biology, it's not your body. We are information, and what animates us is units of information. So it's a non-human agency. It's not a self, not a biological embodied self, but most of the theories that we have today, we think of ourselves as animated. Even in anthropology today, until recently, the main metaphor for describing identity and researching identity was performance. So we had an identity and we're performing. But the metaphor now shifts. In the last couple of years, they're talking about animation, because there's a different notion of identity, and animation becomes a theory of identity. It allows you to ask totally different questions now. You know, when you look online, you see a lot of identities that you see they are animated by a couple of people, for example. So it's a constructed identity, even if it represents a person. So this theory of animation is going to many places right now, because this is how we imagine ourselves. And if you think about a vampire, he's animated by something that is not human. So I think this is why, because science takes us to those places of thinking of ourselves as not being there and having some agency animates us, this is why we see a lot of it in popular culture, a lot of the things that we imagine. How do we look when we're animated? Can you see it from the outside? How does our behavior change when we're animated? So this is one mechanism, and I'm putting here a quote from an American anthropologist, Ilana Gershon, that says explains how she analyzes Facebook profiles of people, for example, through this theory of animation. She doesn't look at it as performances anymore. She looks at it as an animated self, with a community of Facebook associates, computer programmers, and so on, joining together to help fashion an appearance of a unified character out of pastiche of many people's actions and utterances. So a lot of the research today is shifting to looking through the eyes of animation at online identity. Now, this is a quote from Norbert Wiener from the 1950s, from Cybernetics and Society, and he explains to you, to begin with, why you are actually information. You're not a body. So you're a pattern. It is the pattern which is the touchstone of our personal identity. Our tissues change as we live. The food we eat and the air we breathe becomes flesh of our flesh and bone of our bone, and the momentary elements of our flesh and bone pass out of our body every day with our, we are but real pools in a river of ever-flowing water. We're not stuff that abides, but patterns that perpetuate themselves. So this is really compelling, because if you try to remember something from when you were 10 years old, for example, it's very hard, right? Was this you? That person that you remember as 10 years old? What makes it you? Because every cell of your body already changed, right? So how is this you? How can you say that you are your biology? Your biology changed. The only link that you have to that you, in parentheses, of 10 years old is memory, is this pattern, right? So this theory of cybernetics became really influential in the way modern scientists and transhumanists think about themselves today. Because if we are only patterns of information and biology doesn't matter, it changes anyway, maybe we could separate those things. We could take whatever pattern is us, makes us, and we could do something else with it. And so this is the second part, the second type of mechanism avoiding human agency, that thinking about you as a form of creating an avatar life for a perfect imitation of your pattern. See, there's a lot of projects today, even in the European Union, there's the Blue Brain project, in which it's actually, you're trying to, through mathematics, to represent and capture the patterns of how your brain operates, and if you can copy and create all those patterns, then technically you could copy a brain. And if you copy a brain, maybe you have that person. So people are trying to capture all those unique patterns that make you you, those unique connections through your neurons. And if it is possible, it's just today, it's theoretically, if it works, I don't know if technically you could capture something so complex, but in theory, the idea is that we could create you, and then you would live forever as information, maybe in the media, but it won't be exactly you. It won't be your biological you, but maybe we could copy the same awareness. So this is another way in which we think about ourselves as without human agency, because we won't be us. It won't be this you. It's a perfect copy of you, but you are dead, right? It's a perfect copy of you, and to what extent it will be you and you will experience this as a continuation of you, it's an open question, if it will even be possible. But those are the two scientific methods that are being pursued today, and are being promoted through scientific literature, popular science literature, and science fiction. And this is what fuels our imagery about how will we be in the future. It will be an imitation of us, a pattern of us that will continue to live, or maybe our biology will still be here, but will be animated by something that lives forever, like a vampire, or maybe we won't have flesh. We won't have need of flesh. We'll be turned to information and live forever in the computers. And while I'm saying this, you're probably thinking a lot about recent movies that have visualized this, like Transcendence, for example, right? So this is what's going on right now in popular culture, because these are the scientific paths that are being pursued, and both of them are leaving us behind in a way. Whatever we think of as us, this agency that is us, they're telling us, you know, you don't exist, not the way you think. And we can show it to you if you'll be able to do those things, when we'll be able to do them technically. Now, this idea of an avatar life that will be a perfect imitation of you actually comes from the Turing test. Also, all those theories were born in the 50s, but are still affecting us, and even more than they affected us in their time. You probably know the Turing test and Alan Turing as a way to validate AI. If an AI passes the Turing test, is able to talk like a person, then, well, what's the difference? That we can say it's intelligent, it's thinking, because we can't tell the difference between it and a person. But the Turing test, to my opinion, had an even profounder meaning to this idea that we have, that we could create life or animate ourselves in a totally different pattern that will be exactly like us. Because the Turing test created this idea, this postmodern idea, that the copy has there's no difference between the copy and the original, right? Because the idea was, you know, Turing thought, what if a computer could think? How would we know that the computer thinks? When will it pass as a person? And he didn't want to answer this question philosophically. He took this question to the realm of performance. He said, I don't know if the computer will think, but when he will able to perform thinking in a way that will fool a lot of people, then we'll say that the computer is intelligent. Now, it doesn't mean that this computer has agency. There's a lot of chatbots out there today that can pass the Turing test, and it doesn't mean that they actually think, they have real agency in what we mean in social theory when we say agency. It doesn't mean that they have subjectivity, consciousness. All those things don't matter anymore. No, it's all about the outside performance, or maybe we should say animation, right? It's animated by an algorithm, it's animated by computer code that could do a perfect imitation of a person. And a perfect imitation becomes enough. You know, a perfect imitation of you is enough you. We don't need more than that. So, in a way, Turing has invented postmodernism, even before Derrida and Baudrillard and other people who started talking about the fact that we value representations and we live between representations and we don't care if they have an origin and what's the difference between a representation and an origin. So in a way, the Turing test is what created this type of thinking that is very embedded in science today. We think about continuing you, but not your biology, just your patterns. If it will be a good enough performance of you, we will say that this avatar is you. Maybe you won't be satisfied with it, but it will be passing the Turing test of you. You know, your family would say, yeah, I remember those memories. That's enough. And there are already projects that are going on today. There's the Bina project, if you heard about it. Bina is a woman that gave herself to science. You know, she's telling her stories to an algorithm. It's being recorded. She's trying to record all her memories in aim that after her death, there will stay this robot that looks like her. For now, it has only a head. So it has her head, it looks like her, and she's able to talk and converse with you based on Bina's memories. And so this is something that could be a model of how we are in the future. It's an animated us, animated by remains of a memory in a way, and this is based on this thinking of the Turing test that it doesn't have to be you, it just has to be a good enough imitation of you. And the more complex we're able to do it, the better it will be, and it will be enough. So I'm moving now this idea of the zombies and vampires and animation and avatar into virtual life. Now, I talked about what posthumanism means, and one of the meanings of posthumanism, according to scholar Catherine Hales, is actually to be posthuman is to be virtual, to live in a virtual culture, to believe in virtuality in the sense that it's a culture of perception that devalues materiality. Material objects just are interpreted in terms of information. We don't think about it as matter. It doesn't matter. So it's a bit like with the zombie that we said. It's not about our flesh. Humans are not valued as a biological entity. If we could imitate their patterns, then we could put them online and we can say, this is you. And so this is an aspect of post-humanity, according to Catherine Hales, because this is the culture of virtuality. When she says virtuality, she doesn't mean just your life online as virtual, but even offline. This kind of thinking that you can explain everything through information and the materiality of it doesn't matter. See, if you have just a crazy example from a different realm, let's say you have a book that you really like, and then there's this adaptation of this book to the movies. So people expect the information to stay intact, however it is mediated. They don't care about the context, about the matter. No, this is the story. This is Harry Potter, and we want to see the exact Harry Potter in the movies, and we don't care if it's not the exact dialogue and all the aspects of the character, and we say the movie sucks. We don't want to see it. It's not like the book. So this is an aspect of the culture of virtuality because we expect the information to stay intact and never change, however it is mediated through whatever medium it works. But being aware of the context, we know that film is a very different medium, and sometimes even the authors themselves participate in the adaptation of the film and change the stories because they have to, because it's a different medium. So information doesn't just exist by itself. It depends, it changes according to the medium, according to the matter it is embodied through. And so when she says that we live in a culture of virtuality, it's not just about ourselves, how we perceive ourselves, that we can be detached out of our body and stay the same if we're being mediated through a robot or sent to, or our information is sent to Rome online, but also those types of things of expecting materials to stay the same. Because we think of the world only in terms of information. Everything else is interchangeable. Now, Catherine Hales talked about how this affects our interaction with technologies, because we don't see ourselves as individuals anymore. When we interact with an Xbox Kinect, or even when we surf our Facebook feeds, that we feel that we are transferring an aspect of ourselves to this technology. We no longer have the borders of our bodies. When we're in feedback loops with technologies, then we become part of technology in a way. It becomes an extension of us, we're interacting with technology, and we no longer think of ourselves as individuals. We're part of the system. But today it's even worse than when she wrote it in 1999, because today we don't even have this Cartesian dichotomy of having a body and the information, which is our consciousness. We think of everything as information. Information is the blueprint of the body as well. We print organs in 3D printers. So there's a reason today, a scientific reason, or at least scientific imagery, that we think all of this is possible. It's not just science fiction. If we only have the right mathematical formula and the right algorithms, we can create a body. So it's not just, information versus body. Body is information. With the right information, we can create the world. So this is the kind of thinking that we have today that makes us think that maybe it's not science fiction to be completely virtual, to become a zombie, right? It's all a matter of information, and with the right tools, with the right information, we can create bodies if we need them, and maybe we don't need them at all. Now, why I called this lecture Living as Information in the Media, because Catherine Hills stressed this aspect of us being information, thinking of ourselves as information. And Mark Dess, that I mentioned before with the zombies, stresses this aspect that we live today in the media rather than with the media. It's not a relationship of us with a tool, but it's a social environment in which we actually live, an aspect of ourselves live. But I'm connecting them to say, you know, how do we live in the media? I don't want to use this as metaphors. We talked about metaphors so far, and zombies and vampires and everything is a metaphor. But what I'm trying to say is that it's not a metaphor anymore, it's an ontology. Because of today's science, we actually believe that we can make ourselves live in the media, that what lives in the media is actually an aspect of us. Maybe it's the essence of us. So it's not just our information. When we think about media research, new media research, the concerns that we have, privacy, our information, our pictures, what if they see them, what if not? I'm talking about a totally different level here. This is not your pictures. This is you. Your data is you. It's an aspect of you. So to start thinking about it as identity, according to those theories, and then think about yourself as you live as information in the media, what type of you is out there? Not just as a metaphor, it's not a representation of you. According to those theories, those are bits of you. Parts of you are actually living, alive in the media, so you're living in an augmented way. Parts of you are actually transferred to the media, and what are the consequences for us? How does this look like? So maybe as the metaphor of living in the matrix, maybe it's no longer a metaphor. Maybe this is where we're going, where it's having more and more aspects of ourselves as data online and experiencing this data as a form of self. And I'll give you a small example of how I think it plays out in the lives of each and every one of us. For example, online dating, right? So we're still embodied creatures. And we're burdened with this embodied experience while the media, being a post-human space, compels us towards experiencing more and more of the things as information. It's living as information. So how does this play out for us? It creates a huge tension between the aspects of information, us as information, and us as a body. A dating app or a dating site, and we swipe and look at people. These are not people. It's hard to experience them as people. In terms of our biology, seeing so many people, remembering stuff about so many people, it's impossible. You know, evolutionary biologists say that we still, like our forefathers from the days of pre-Bible, we're able to remember only details about 100, 150 people. We're not able to. So if you have 3,000 Facebook friends, it has to be zombie-like superficial, because you're not capable of. Your biology is not capable of remembering. Now, it's not only about remembering. When you see so many people all the time, it's not an embodied experience. It's not like being in a party, being surrounded with so many people. It's just you start seeing them as information, as content. You don't feel that you're looking in the eyes of a different person. And this may be a different way to explain those consequences of online dating, that you have more superficial ties and less respect, and people don't really find someone. They look at a lot of people, they don't find someone, they're not happy with the people they meet, they meet someone and then go and date another 5, you know? And this is not just the luxury of capitalism, that you have so many choices. Think about it pragmatically, as an embodied experience. You don't really feel that you met a lot of people. If you went to one of those speed dating things, that you actually meet new people, like you have to sit somewhere and every 5 minutes a person would be in front of you and you have to speak for 5 minutes. After 12 people, you will faint. It's daunting. But here you can sit hours and swipe right, swipe left, swipe right, swipe left. It's not like meeting people. You're looking at content, you're experiencing this as information. And you know what? You're trying to assess your attraction to those people. If I meet them, will I like them? According to one sense, visual. only visual. This is not how attraction works. When you meet people, you have a multisensory experience. You have the smell, the pheromones are supposed to be very important to that, but we don't even know it. We don't know how this happens, right? But it's not the same. When you look at someone online, you can't assess if you would like them or not. It just doesn't work like this. You're working with a disability. You're looking at this only through one sense, and it's just impossible. So no wonder that when you meet them, even if they look like their picture, something's off, right? So this is just one example of how we try to live today in a way, in a media that compels us to live as information, meet people in their information form, but we're still embodied, and it's really hard to bridge those things. This is Emmanuel Levinas, one of my favorite philosophers, and Emmanuel Levinas talks about the fact that ethics is something that could happen only face to face. It's, for him, it's in the eyes, in the face. When you look someone in the eye, then you, this is where the ethical situation is invoked for you. And today, if you look at somebody in their eyes online, it's just not the same. Even if it's a video, if you're in a Google Hangout or in Skype, and you think you look someone in the eye, it doesn't invoke an ethical situation. It's, this is why we see online stuff like people who commit suicide on YouTube, on videos. You know, they tell people, I'm taking pills right now, and instead of reacting the way you would react if somebody would do it in front of your eyes, people say, yeah, okay, come on, faster, faster, right? It's not that they're crazy people, trolls out there. It's just they don't see it as a body in front of them. This is just content. And so this is a lot of the things that we experience online, I try to explain them not through the fact that we're being zombified and multi-technology and things like that, but think about what we're compelled to do. We are being told from all over the place that we're going to become information, that we are actually information. This is the way for us to live. We don't need our bodies anymore. But it seems that we do. At least so far, it seems that we do, and a lot of the things that happen online that we're concerned about, incidents of shaming and whatever, could be explained to those ideas. And what I want you to leave you with is this thought of whatever concerns you online, try to think about it as an instance of information versus body. If this really can be lived as information, or do we miss something because we're not embodied in this situation? I'll leave you with one last thought, one last idea. One of the most interesting things that are being researched in the new media research today, and I'm very interested in, is our death practices online. People die, and what happens after people die online? So a lot of the research is looking at it from as digital assets, in terms of privacy, if we can enter the Facebook of a deceased, what happens with the Facebook of the deceased, all those social awkwardness when people don't realize somebody on their Facebook dies and they wish them happy birthday 2 years later, you know, the algorithms and things that happen. So there's a lot of interesting concerns with those dead Facebook pages. But what I'm mostly interested in is, if I turn this to terms of identity, is, do these people continue to live online in a certain way? Now, there are people today that live, during their lives, they teach a Twitter bot, for example, to tweet like them. They teach them the Twitter, their style, and when they're dead, the Twitter sends them every week an email, and if they don't answer this email twice, Twitter knows that they're dead, and then the service kicks in and continues to tweet with their style. Are they alive? Is this an aspect of them that is alive? Are they continuing their lives online? Can we say that they live forever and they're transhuman just because their words continue on and somebody tweets in their style? So I think we're going to see more and more those kinds of phenomena, like Tupac, for example, that continues to perform after his death through a hologram. We're going to see more and more the dead living between us as animated memories and animated data. And I think this is one of the most interesting things to research today, because we're totally going towards seeing ourselves as information, living as information, animating ourselves, being animated, animating others, and where is the body in this, and how embodied are we really? This is something that we're going to figure out in the future. Thank you.
Horizontal overview of, let's say, the main topics of new media and post-humanism mixed in the same presentation. We still have some time for questions and thoughts. Maybe you would like to ask something.
I want to ask, why did you use zombies and vampires, not as I like feel, friendly dogs, beautiful girls, and all the other contexts, because in my imagination it is more natural context for me that this symbolic relation with zombie. In my influence, I think that more typical is this friendly dogs or beautiful girls, not this dark part of your imagination.
You know, I could have done this with cats just as well. You know, if I started with internet cats, I would have gone to the same argument. So I think this is another aspect of post-humanity, that we have a lot of things that we like, and heroes out there that are non-human. We shift towards the non-human, and there's a lot of interesting theories today of how internet cats are actually replacing women in the imagery of geeks. So I could do this entire talk with cute cats. I chose the zombies and vampires for the reason that Jan told me that
maybe compromise.
Wrocław is
cat.
That Wrocław is a place of a lot of zombie video games, and there's a zombie fandom here. So
yeah, and we could add that animal studies is a huge part of post-human research nowadays. So this is why Carmel mentioned it. Anyone else?
When we compare this situation that we were talking about with these experiments of contemporary biology experiments, changing minds, you know, taking parts of other people and so on and so on. So it brings up so many ethical problems. And we can treat it, okay, people must change in their ethical rules, and they must change simply in their minds in the future. But is that possible in the fast way? Do you check? Do you test? Do you check the things in your researches?
but this is actually a great question, and I think this idea that you mentioned is a thread in my book. How the things we used to fear become our new dreams. How past dystopia is the new utopia. We used to fear that we will be dehumanized, and now it's the new dream. Being dehumanized, wow, being a cyborg, being something more. So something has changed there in the framing, and I think I used the zombies and vampires to show how they change from monster to desirable, and I think this happens with technology and with many other things, and even with those genetic changes. Eugenics used to be a bad word, and suddenly it comes down. We don't call it eugenics, we call it human enhancement. And suddenly it's something that is desirable, and there are new frameworks that say this will not happen. It doesn't come from the same ideologies of the past of making a better human. It's all of us will be different humans, maybe not human, post-human. It will solve all our problems, or at least according to those rhetorics. And again, I'm purposefully avoiding of saying this is dangerous or this should happen. You know, I'm trying to look at it pragmatically. And say, you know, this is happening, just notice how you reframe this. So is this what you want? Do you really think it will work? Oh, okay, we'll see. Let's see what you're trying to do. What is it based on, right? And if all this kind of thinking, for example, is based on the Turing argument, will this just work, you know? Because it was an interpretation of something, and now we're making it hardcore science. Okay? So I'm trying to look at it from, not to be critical to its ethics, because I think that ethics is a human thing. Ethics, you have a place to talk about ethics between humans. Once we're not so human anymore, what's the ethics of information? And this is one of the problems. If all of us has information, our information, and we're just information flowing, we're big data flowing in the media, what's the meaning of ethics between two people in that context?
Thank you.